So the next thing that you kind of want to look at is what's called credit mix. This doesn't have a huge impact on your credit score, but it's worthwhile. Credit mix is exactly what it sounds like. It's how variable is your credit. This is talking about, do you have credit cards? Do you have personal loans? Do you have student loans? Do you have a mortgage? Do you have rent that's reporting? Do you have any auto loans or leases? Those all count to credit mix. Welcome back to the Prospecting Show, where each week we talk about tips, tricks, and methods for growing an amazing small business pipeline. I'm your host, Dr. Connor Robertson, and on this podcast, you can expect segments on communication, sales, prospecting, and closing. Thank you to everyone who has supported my 100 episodes and 100 days goal going into 2020. Enjoy the show. Episode number 10 here on the Prospecting Show. I am, again, trying to do 100 episodes in 100 days, and today's episode is just me here alone talking about credit. A lot of people that I've worked with, a lot of friends, people see me traveling around a lot and keep asking, how do you travel and not spend a lot of money doing it? And the big thing to look at is, well, if you want to travel, you might as well fix your credit and improve your credit at the same time. So just to give some background to individuals who don't really know me super well, I originally grew up in Canada and I am living in the great United States of America now. So because of that, a lot of great things happened, but there are some things that are a little different. One of those things, which is looking at establishing U.S. credit. Most people, when they're 16, they get a credit card, maybe 18 get a credit card. Anything before that, it's probably secured with their parents. So most Americans, by the time they're 25, around my age, they would have somewhere between 6 and 8 years of credit. I did not have that in the United States because I came here in 2014, the end of 2014, to go to school. And then I actually started working at the end of 2017, early 2018. So because of that, basically what ended up happening is I had to establish a bunch of credit. And the way that I did that was a little bit of credit arbitrage. So for those of you who don't know a ton about credit, credit score in the United States, FICO is one of the most common scores. And with that, kind of the max is about 850. You don't really need to shoot for a perfect credit score, but there certainly is a difference between having an 850 and a 700 per se. And basically what I ended up doing was I looked at it and said, well, I want to do a few different things. I want 0% credit so I can leverage it. I want to get somewhere around 100 to 200K in available credit. And I also want to be able to travel at the same time while keeping costs down and building the credit score up. And so for those of you who don't know a ton about how credit works, there are a couple big factors on credit. The one that everybody knows is payment history, right? You got to pay your credit cards on time. Usually there's a statement. It goes from the 1st to the 30th of the month. And then there's another 15 days in the month or so beyond that where you have this kind of grace period where you can pay the card. So all those expenses that you put on there, they go through a 30, sometimes 45-day cycle, and then you get another 2 weeks or so to pay them. Now, in order to get really good with credit, you got to have a strategy around it. And so the first thing I worked on was personal credit score. With credit cards, the scores that you're getting are all based on credit card score. So if you get credit for a car, there's an auto FICO score. If you get credit on a home like a mortgage, there's a different score there. But when you're doing revolving credit like a credit card, there's a different scoring system. So in the credit card space, basically what ends up happening is you have to leverage the standard credit factors, one of which is payment history that we talked about before. But then there's also utilization, which is the next biggest category, and utilization is basically calculated as a percentage. So if you have a $10,000 credit limit and you use $1,000 in credit that month, the statement posts with $1,000 due. That's $1,000 out of $10,000 for a total of 10% utilization. Now, utilization is calculated not only within one card, but also across multiple cards for that FICO score. So if you have 3 cards with $10,000 on them as available limit, that's a $30,000 worth of available credit. If you have $1,000 on the first card, 0 on the next card, and 0 on the other card, that's $1,000 out of $30,000. So your individual utilization on one card is 1,000 out of 10,000, which is 10%. But across 3 cards, you're using $1,000 out of $30,000. So you're looking at 3.33% utilization. So that's the next factor in credit. Now, the one that really jacks you up when you're either young or you're new to a country and you're trying to establish credit is what they call the average age of accounts, AAA, AAA, average age of accounts. Now, the average age of accounts are calculated based on the age of each individual card divided by the total number of cards. So it's a lot like utilization, where it matters within one card, but it also matters amongst multiple other cards. So average age, the way that works, if you have no credit cards right now, your average age is 0. If you get a credit card today and wait 1 year, in 1 year from now, your average age of accounts, or your AAA, is 1 year. Now, if you have 2 cards, but you get that 1 card today, you wait 6 months and get another card, and then you wait another 6 months, what's going to end up happening is you're going to have 1 card that's now 12 months old because you waited the full 12 months, and that 1 card you got at the 6-month point is now only 6 months old. So it's the 6 and the 12 that gets you 18 divided by 2. Your average age is 9 months. And so for those of you who like to hack credit, you definitely want to have something around 1.3 to 1.6 years worth of average age of accounts. If you're in the United States, new to, like I am, to the country overall, with a kind of working social history, credit availability, things like that, you're probably not going to have that 1.3 average, but it doesn't really matter because, you'll end up getting there. And so because of that, probably what's going to happen is you're going to sit in that 0.6 to 0.9 range, less than that. So you're just going to have a little bit of difficulty if you try and apply for a mortgage or something crazy right away, or a big auto loan or something like that. So the next thing that you kind of want to look at is what's called credit mix. This doesn't have a huge impact on your credit score, but it's worthwhile. Credit mix is exactly what it sounds like. It's how variable is your credit. This is talking about, do you have credit cards? Do you have personal loans? Do you have student loans? Do you have a mortgage? Do you have rent that's reporting? Do you have any auto loans or leases? Those all account to credit mix. So the more variation you have, the better. And if you want to shoot for maximal credit score, you need to have 21 accounts on average. So that could be 21 credit cards, or it could be, 20 credit cards and 1 auto loan, or 19 credit cards, 1 auto loan, and 1 mortgage. It doesn't really matter, but you need to have some mix in there. Generally speaking, people have more credit cards than any other type of credit, but it is definitely advised to get some revolving credit lines or loans that exist, because then that shows that you have good dependency with your loans itself. So the way that the banks are evaluating you, it's kind of like a report card. They're saying, well, we lent this individual money and they paid it back on time. Their payment history was perfect. They never missed a payment. They only used a little bit of credit. We gave him a $10,000 credit card, but he only used 1% of that. Or 10% of that, or whatever it is. And then the last part is that the mix, like he or she has lots of different variation in the credit itself. They have a mortgage, they have a car, they got credit cards, they got a loan, they got student loans, they got all these different types of credit that shows that they're responsible in different ways. Now, the reason that that's super important is because at the end of the day, when you want to go get more money from a bank, they're going to want to see those particular things. Now, the reason that this gets really dangerous in the United States is because the FICO score does not take into consideration how much available credit you have. So it reports the amount of credit that you have available based on the number of credit cards and the loans and the leases and the mortgages and all that. But what it does not do is give you a credit score based on how much available credit there is. Most Americans have 1 to 2 credit cards, and they're usually $5,000 limits or less. So they have an average of $10,000 in available credit on cards. Now, also, the average American makes somewhere around $36,000 annual household income. I think is about $60,000, something like that. And because of that, their available credit that they have with their cards is substantially less than their income. However, if you're going to get into credit hacking and travel hacking, you're definitely going to have ridiculous high volume of credit lines. So if you go out and go to some of the most popular banks, which in this particular case for credit cards are going to be Chase and American Express, you're going to find that most of their cards, once you're approved for them, they're going to start at $10,000 limits. So you can see very quickly, if you open up 10 cards at $10,000 a piece, you have $100K in credit, which is awesome and is probably far outweighing the income of most individuals if you just took that across the United States. but that's just the available credit. Doesn't mean you need to use it, but in the US, the reason there's so many bankruptcy issues partly is because they lend, or they do overextension of their lending, which basically means that the banks are lending more money than the individuals can pay back. So if you make a $60,000 income, that's $5,000 a month. If you have a $5,000 credit card, that's already pretty dangerous because you need to pay that off once per month. And we all know you got taxes first, so you really don't have $5,000. So if you max out that credit card at $5,000, you really can't pay it back the next month. And now you start incurring interest of, 20 to 22%, maybe 18%, something like that. So those are kind of the high level items about credit. Next thing I want to talk about is funding, or basically what we call OpM funding. Now, OpM funding is other people's money funding. And the way that individuals describe this is always a little different. The way that I tell people that this works is just look at whose money are you borrowing. If it's your money, which it never is because you're using a credit card, then it's other people's money. So in the case of Chase, for example, if you go to Chase and you ask for a 0% credit card, like the Chase Slate, for example, that's 0% for probably about 17 months, maybe it's 15 months, 12 months. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. I'd have to go look it up. But it's 0%, and that would be considered an OPM, other people's money, because you're getting money from them, $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 based on your income at 0% for, let's say, 15 months. That is an OPM leverage, other people's money leverage. If you take that money, pull it out of the credit card with a cash advance on a card that allows that, they don't ding you for it on certain cards like the Chase Slate card. You take that, you write a check to yourself, and you deposit it in your checking account, and you invest that in a high yield account, something that's 10 to 15% high risk in 1 year. Well, you just took $0 money, $10,000, let's say, on the card, pulled it out, put it in your checking account, grew it on a high risk interest, not a bond or anything like that, but something high risk short-term interest like Forex or something like that. And at 10%, you turn your 10K into 11K. And then right before you got to pay that off at the 14-month mark, you'd put the 10K back on the credit card and you would pocket yourself $1,000 for basically doing nothing. Now, if you want to take that one step further, you can use those dollars to do other things. You can run Facebook ads with it if you're trying to build a personal brand. You could use it to hire somebody temporarily so you could get those funds out, or you could basically cash advance yourself money for whatever other reasons you would want. And even if you had, let's say, a high car loan, something that was, you had $5,000 left on a car loan and you're paying 6% on that, well, that's not awesome, but that's also not terrible. So at the end of the day, it's like you could take that $5,000 and pay that off immediately, so that goes down to zero, and then you can pay your credit card back over time. So the way that would work is you would take the 0% Chase Slate card, you would take out the $5,000, write yourself a check, put it in your checking account, $5K. There's no lost funds there. It's 1-to-1 ratio. You take 5, you lose 5. The $5,000 then goes over to your car loan. You cut that down. You no longer are paying 6%. You're paying 0% because you get 0% on that credit card for the next 15 months. And then basically, as long as you can pay that 5% or that $5,000 back before the 15 months is up, you've effectively saved yourself 6% on your car loan because it's now 0%. So that's basically an OPM leverage that you could do, just as an example. But then we can talk about business funding. There are some cases where checking accounts will give you a $600 bonus to be able to deposit $3,000 into a checking account. So what you can do is that same thing, get a 0% card for 15 months and use that to fund the checking account with your $3,000 that they require. And then the bank will give you $600 immediately for that. And now you've profited $600 and you can just take the money back out, pay the credit card, and you're good to go. Now, that's a very strategic kind of method. I wouldn't do that within the same bank because they might get a little bit funny about that. But, I mean, the rules are rules. If you can fund with a credit card, you can fund with a credit card. All you're doing is using the rules here. You're not really breaking them. You're just kind of bending them in your favor. So that's a funding strategy. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the 5 and 24 rule. This is kind of an unspoken rule for Chase Bank. Chase is probably the biggest bank in the United States here. They have an unspoken 5 and 24 rule, which says that in the last 24 months, if you've opened any 5 new credit card accounts, they will not approve you for any cards. And so for those travel hackers out there, Chase has some of the best benefits, like the Chase Sapphire Preferred, Chase Sapphire Reserve, the Chase Business Inc., and some of these other cards that are tied together. So if you are going to do travel hacking, before you do anything, make sure you understand the 5 and 24 rule, because if you open Chase cards last, you're going to find out that you can't open any of them, and then you can't get yourself into a situation where you are able to leverage those points. So me, myself, I one of my first cards I got in the United States with the Chase Sapphire Preferred. It's a $95 annual fee. You spend $4,000 in the first 3 months and you get 60,000 bonus points. So I'll say that one more time. It's the Chase Sapphire Preferred. It's a $95 annual fee, waived the first year, so it costs you $0 for the first year. If you spend $4,000 in the first 3 months, they will give you 60,000 points. If you convert that to travel, it's about $700 to $800 worth of travel. You could take a flight probably for 2 people, 2 directions anywhere in the United States. And sometimes you could even get some hotels. If you convert it to one of their hotel partners, you could probably get yourself 3, 4, 5 nights on that pretty easily, maybe a whole week, really depends on what you're into. But if you convert them right, get some bonuses and do the transfer and use them for travel, because the Chase card's a travel card, you're definitely going to win there. If you switch off of Chase, because we already talked 5 and 24 on some of their basic cards, and you go over to American Express, you're going to find that American Express has a great selection of 0% cards. You have the 0% Blue Cash Blue Cash. You got the Blue Cash Preferred. You have the Everyday Cash. You got the Everyday Cash Preferred. Both of those are 0%. You have the Cash Magnet. That's also a 0% card. And there are a couple other ones. There's actually a blue business card that just recently came out that also is a 0% card. So all of those together allow you on average 12 to 15 months of 0%. So if you get good and creative, you can leverage that and do a balance transfer back out of that. Now, if you get a credit card and you're not sure the difference between the APR and the balance transfer rate, the BTR, you need to do some homework before you get crazy with this. I'm not providing financial advice here. I'm just telling you how you can do it. But you need to read up and learn how these systems work so that you do it the right way. There's no sense in doing something that you don't know how to do, because you get yourself in some serious trouble. I'm just presenting ideas and ways that you can actually leverage these systems that are currently in place and are totally legal. So look at that for American Express, those different cards. Again, Blue Cash, or Everyday Cash, you got Cash Magnet, and a few other cards there. It's notable that American Express also has these other kind of cards called charge cards. That's the Amex Platinum, the Amex Black card, which takes a lot to qualify for, but the Amex Green, the Amex Plum, and Amex Gold. And so they have business and personal versions of almost all those cards there. The only one that I believe does not have a personal version is the American Express Plum, which is a card I have. The nice thing about that is it's a charge card, so there's no predefined limit, just like the Gold card and the Platinum card. There's no predefined limit. And when it reports for your credit score, all it does is show as one card. It does not show, there's no utilization, because there is no limit. So there's no $10,000 limit where you're using 1,000 and they're calculating a 10% utilization. What it is that they have a card, they show it as an open account, they show the average age of that account, but they don't calculate utilization. So that won't hurt you or help you. It's kind of a neutral point there. But as you spend more money over time, that card will have more of a limit. And the reason I like the Plum card, it's a $0 fee in the first year, $250 fee in the second year and beyond, but it gives you 60 days net. So if you want to flow some money for business, you can do that. Also, it has pretty high limits overall, so it's kind of nice. I might end up doing a product change here to something like the Platinum card or the Gold card coming up. But at the end of the day, super happy with the card itself, because it gives you that flexibility to kind of pay when you want to. And having that extra a month can be kind of strategic if you're trying to move funds around, paying down some loans or paying off some other debts. It's a good opportunity to have that. Now, balance transfers are really tricky, or can be really tricky. If you know what you're doing, it becomes a lot easier. But certain cards like the Amex Everyday card is a 0% APR and a 0% balance transfer, meaning that there's no fee associated with taking money off of another credit card and moving it to that card. So the reason that somebody would do that is a couple-fold. One, they have a credit card that, let's say it's 22% interest rate, and they have $5,000 on that card, and they're past due, so they're going to have to pay 22% of that money. What they can do is go open this Amex Everyday card and do a balance transfer. So they can take the $5,000 they owe on the old card, move it to this card with a $0 fee. So there's no fee to transfer it, and you're going to get $0 or 0% financing on that for the next 15 months. So the Everyday card is pretty much the only card that American Express has that allows a $0 balance transfer like that. Pretty much all the other cards there, and most of the Chase cards, other than the Slate, I believe, could be a 0% APR, meaning there's no payment due for 15 months. But there's a fee associated with the balance transfer, which is usually 3% or $5, whichever is greater. And they just calculate that based on the situation. So it's a lot like taking those funds out that I talked about. If you have a 0% card and you want to write yourself a check and pull all that money out of the credit card, wait 15 months and then put it back on so you can invest that money or spend it some other way. That's what you're doing with a normal 0% APR card. When you do a balance transfer, the same thing happens. If you have a card with Chase that has $5,000 on it and you want the American Express every day and do a balance transfer, so transfer the balance from Chase to American Express, what ends up happening is American Express writes a check to Chase, Chase deposits it and pays off the card, and then American Express assumes that debt from that other card. So that's how you do balance transfers and kind of how it's going. I'm not going to talk too much about repair because it gets a little crazy. But for those young listeners out there that are trying to build their credit quickly, one of the biggest things for them, like I said before, is the average age of accounts. One way to help that is to get an AU, Authorized User. You can get one of those by talking to your parents or a sibling or somebody you know. Tell them, hey, listen, put me on your credit card. And when you put me on your credit card, I want you to not give me access, take the card, cut it up if you want, but put me on it there. That way that you can start inheriting their credit profile, and as long as they have good credit, those average age might, be great. So if you have a parent, if you're a young kid under, let's say 18, and you have parents that are 45, let's say, they might have 20 years of credit history. If their credit's good, that individual under 18 can acquire all 20 years of credit history very, very quickly by becoming an authorized user on one of those accounts. So that's a good way to get those average age of accounts up without being in a country very long time like myself, or just being young overall. So those are kind of some hacks. Hopefully that helps everybody out there. If you have any questions about credit hacking, let me know. Connor at syntax.com, CONNOR at syntax, SYNTACZ.com. And thanks a lot for listening to the prospecting show here. I know this one was a little off key on the content, but I thought it would help you guys out. Thanks a lot. Have a great night.